I finally made the biggest smart home decision of the year. I'm going to be moving all of my automations from Home Assistant into Node Red. I want to get that complete UI view of all of my automations working in one place. It's going to be easy to actually remember which automations I've got running. Today we're going to be using that to create some basic automations that anyone can use. You got to find a copy of this video in the Node Red course. If you're already subscribed to the membership, you can get ad-free access to it. If not, there's a link in the description down below if you want to get access to this video ads-free plus all the other videos. Now I'm going to assume you've already got Node Red installed and Home Assistant with a couple of devices integrated. We're going to be creating two different flows in Node Red. We're going to be creating a leaving home flow, which you can see on the top over here, and we're going to be creating a coming back home, which you can see at the bottom. The leaving home routine is going to use an occupancy sensor, which is going to look at if we are home or not, and then it's going to find all the lights that are currently on, and then it's going to turn them off. So in a blank canvas, drag and drop the event state node. Once you're in here, give it a name. I'm calling it empty home. The server is your Home Assistant server that you've set up. The entity, here you're going to pick your occupancy entity that you created previously. Let me show you the one I created. The home occupancy sensor that I built is using templating. The output will be either true or false. So if it's true, if somebody's home, it's false if the house is empty. So you can see the code over here is pretty straightforward. I'm using a sensor. I've named the sensor home occupancy. I've got a friendly name, someone home question mark. I'm using an icon template, which is set up in this way. So it's got a simple if statement. So if the state of the sensor is on, then we're going to be using the home account MDI, and else the home outline. So this is the MDI for when people are out. You don't really have to do this, it's just for the icon. What actually really matters is the value template, and it's going to give you a couple of things. So we could have just simply used the HomeKit presence trigger that I set up in my previous video. However, I'm also including an input boolean to define if there's a guest or not. So if there is a guest, then this will be overridden. If guest is on, then there will be someone home, even if I've left with the HomeKit presence sensor. So once you've got all this set up, save your configuration and restart Home Assistant. Back into Node Red, at this point you should be able to pick it up from here. Once you pick the entity, then go and click on if state, put is, and then put false. You could put is not true. It's really up to you how you want to build the node. So once that's done, click done. Now I'm also using this inject that you can see over here. The purpose of the inject is to test out the node. So the beautiful thing with Node Red is that you can test things as they go. To drag this inject node in, you can find it here on the common inject, or you can use the search bar and type it in. So once you've dragged it in, remember to drag this node right to the next node, and then we're going to drag this one, which says is true, which then goes into here, the get lights, which we're going to be talking about right now. The get entities node is what you're going to need. You can find it because it's got a little paper with this object over here. So this, you just basically drag it in over here. Now you could just use a simple turn all off lights, right? So that is possible to do in Home Assistant. But what you don't want to do is sending these messages across your network to all of your devices. Let me go to the developer tools and explain this to you in a bit more detail. So you have three things that you can do with the lights. You can toggle the light, so it will flip, and that simulates your current switch. So if the light is off, you'll turn it on. If it's on, it will go off. So it's reversing the state of the light. The turn off will turn off even if the light is already off. So it's not going to take any effect. And if it's on, then it will take effect. Same for turn on, it's the reverse. So really you don't want to send a turn off command to a light that's already off, because that's inefficient. So we need to compile a list or an array of lights that are actually on. And we can do this for lights and switches and anything really, to be honest. So give this a name. I'm calling it get lights that are on. Pick the Home Assistant server that you're using. The property ID, we need to look at the entity underscore ID. Now this is a cool thing with Node Red. You can use something like starts with. So your entity ID needs to start with light and light dot, which we know is the domain for light. The state that we're looking for, so these lights need to be on. Now you could do this with anything. You could do, I want to find all lights that have a brightness percentage higher than 50, or all lights that are green. you can use any property that you want from the lights. Remember, the property needs to be shared across all lights for this to work. So state is obviously always there. So we're going to use state, and we're going to pick is, and we're going to put it on. And one thing you need to change is the output type. So the output type, we're going to be using an array, and the output location will be this message.payload. So we're going to be pushing this message.payload across. To explain how these messages work in Node Red, imagine you have a plumbing system. Maybe you have tube and you have some water flowing from tubes. And what you want to do is you're going to have water flowing up to a certain point, and once you connect a tube up, right, you make it, and the water continues flowing. So it's the same thing with this Node Red, how it works. The data flows from the left, from the first thing that you've got, and it will pass on a message to the next one, and then the message will be passed on to the end. And I'm actually going to show you this with the message.payload, where you can actually see what's actually ended up at the end, what message flowed. Now we need to use the call service. The call service, you'll find it over here. Just drag it in like you normally do, and connect these dots together. Give this a name, call it turn it off, whatever name it will be easy for you to find out what this is later on. Domain, pick a light, service, turn underscore off. Data, so this is what you sort of going to need to put in yourself. So let's click on the three dots, let me show you in a bit more detail. So we're using something join, right, to join in, and you can say that this is the separator that we're looking for. So the array, right, is going to hold entity ID, so it's going to hold, and they're going to be comma separated. So what we're basically doing here is that we're basically telling it to join them all together based on this comma delimited expression. Type that in exactly as that is. Cool, so that's sort of done. The message payload, you're going to add that in also. So it's a debug node you're going to need to find. So if you scroll down, you should find it here, the debug node, drag it in and connect it up. So I'm just going to create two of them so you can actually find out what's going on. Now let's see what happens. If I click on inject, you actually see the results. So it's successfully injected, but no results were generated. And you can see it from this results, no results message over here. So we're going to need to turn a light on, and then we're going to need to simulate this. So now I've turned the light on, we can try this again. So I'm going to inject, and we got our call off message. Now I'm looking at the debug tab. If you don't know how to get it, just click on the three tabs, view, show sidebar, and then click on this little bug, and you can see the debug. So we can see information from the message.payload. We can see an array of 4 objects, 1, 2, 3, 4 objects. Click over here, you can expand it. You can see the 4 objects. You also see 4 entities over here. So I only turned one light on, and you might ask yourself, why are there 4 entities? You can also see the action that the lights have been turned off, and you can see that sort of working. And I actually check, yes, the light has been turned off, which is right behind here. Looking at the object, we can find out the entity. So this entity over here is a light.colored group. So this is a group. So when one light is on and is part of a group, it also turns that on. So you can see the inspiration room light is another group. We have the first floor lights, which is another group. And the third one is the actual object itself. So if you had a smart way of excluding groups, maybe with your naming convention, or you could also think of even more efficient way of doing that. But ultimately, we're only sending a command to 4 lights instead of sending it to 30 or 40, depending on how many lights you have in your home, for example. So now I've plugged in the message payload after the call service, so we can actually see what's the output of the call service. This is crucial and fundamental. Even if this is working for you, you really need to understand how Node Red works. So let me tap inject, and we can get it all across again. So we can see the information coming from the message. We have 2 different things. We have a message and the message payload. So message payload is what was traveling across from this message over here, which is exactly the same that we observed earlier. This is the actual message coming from this object. So we can see object, domain light, service was turned off, and this is the actual data. So you can see that what it did was it used every single part of the array and concatenated it into one entity ID with a comma. So it created that, and that's what Home Assistant needs to actually turn off multiple entities in one go. To find out actually information in the call service node, remember to check the show debug information. If you're really enjoying this video and you want me to keep making these free Node Red courses here on YouTube. Remember to smash that like button. We want to get at least to 200 likes so that we can actually keep on going with episode 2. And remember to subscribe so you actually know when episode 2 drops. Coming back home, let's look into it. Got the same principle over here. We have the same inject node and we have a back home. It's exactly the same as going away, but this is true instead of it being false. So you can literally just pick this up, Control V, Control C, Control V, go in here, double click on it, change the name over here, change the status from false to true, job done. Now we're going to create a notification that's going to go to your mobile phone to actually give you a couple of options. The options that I'm going to be looking at, either opening the front door or opening the garage, are the normal actions that I might take when I enter the home zone. Be aware that if sometimes you just entered the boundary of the zone, you'll get this notification, even if you don't really intend to go back home. So that's also fine. So even taking no action is sort of something that might occur. The way we need to set this up, this is a standard core service node. By clicking on it, you can see that what I've set up is the domain as notify, give it a name. I've set up the service by using the actual device that Home Assistant is installed on. We've got a message. Now the message, you can click on the 3 dots. This will be empty for you at the beginning, so you can click on load example data and that will like pre-fill it in. And once you've done that, click on the 3 dots and you can actually get this sort of sense of over here. So you only really need a message and a title. This part over here, the data part, is something that you're going to need to actually create yourself to actually give those actions to Home Assistant. You have 2 ways of changing this. You can change with the edit JSON or with the visual editor. Now the visual editor is going to allow you to do things like insert below, add item, to actually organize this yourself. You can also change some of the types. So if you can click on something like, for example, data, and you can click it, you can have different options like a string, number, boolean, array, or object. However, it's sometimes easier, I would say, just to copy and paste the code and paste it inside here and then make some of your changes. So what do you need to change? Now I'm going to be using also a camera stream just because really you don't have to do this. So you can put a camera dot and whatever the camera of your front door is going to be. The actions that I'm going to be taking, currently I have 2 actions. If you want to add one more action, you can just grab this code, copy it, paste it, and just align the bracket again and add a comma here between the 2, and you can create another action called whatever you want. So in the actionable and title, you're going to need to do a couple of things. The action needs to be in all caps for Home Assistant with no spaces, and same for this one over here. These are exactly the same thing. And the title, well, this is what you can see in the notification itself. So let's say open front door and open garage door is what we're going to set over here. So once you're sort of happy with it, even if you're working in edit JSON, it's good to go to visual editor, see if it compiles. If you do have an error here, so let's say you forget to close the bracket, apart from you can see it over here already, it's sort of telling you. If you go to visual editor, it will also give you a JSON parse error, says expected curly bracket. So you can sort of put the curly bracket back in. You can see the red spot goes away and the visual editor works. So click on done. Now I want to set a nice welcome message. So I want to do a text-to-speech message called announce welcome home. So I would suggest that you get another call service, drag it in and give it a name like announce welcome home. Use the TTS if you're using Nabucasa like I am. That should be available for you to use. Add the speaker that's closest to the place where you're gonna come in. For me, that's gonna be the kitchen. And same as before, you can load some example data in the data part and go 3 dots and modify it. The language actually normally is formatted by the initial of your language, so EN, and if you're in the US, you put US, or GB if you're in the UK. So there's a full list on the website. If I remember, I'll put in the link in the description too, so you can sort of change the language, but the language is not really compulsory. Again, you can check in Visual Editor. So once it's done, click done. Once you're happy, so you would connect the notify like this straight into here, okay? Because you don't have this bit yet. Now, what is this actually doing over here? So this is going to allow me to prevent that the welcome home gets announced each time that the notification is sent out. So we're really actually waiting for something to happen. And this object, this node over here, is the wait until, right? So drag a couple of wait untils. I've got two because I've got actually two entries in the home. So I'm either coming from the front door or from the garage door. So I would look at this and let me show you. Put the name, correct name, use the entity that you're going to be tracking. So I'm going to be tracking a contact center on my front door. I'm looking for the state, and the state needs to be on. The timeout is 2 minutes, means that that Node Red is going to check for 2 minutes. If for any reason you, from the moment that a notification is sent, the door doesn't open in 2 minutes, that means that you're sort of not coming in the home, so the whole process will exit. So if you do decide to come in afterwards, you're not going to get the welcome message. That's the sort of way this is set up. Same for the garage door, to be fair, same timeout. Actually, you probably could increase the timeout a bit more. Maybe perhaps because I'm coming with a car, so maybe take me a bit longer to get out of the car and everything. But that's one way of doing it. I've also added this little delay node, and you can find the delay node over here. If you scroll down, you can see delay. And this is very simple to set up. You just put fixed delay for the amount of seconds. I've put 15 seconds. You could put random delays, but this is really not relevant. So 50 seconds means that by the time you open the door, around 15 seconds, just give you enough time to actually walk into the house, you know, get in before you get your announcement, which could be anything. This is just for the purpose of the video. Awesome, I hope you're enjoying it. If you are, remember to smash that like button. Let's go to the notification part. Notification trigger. So at the moment, these two buttons, they really ain't doing anything. So this trigger over here is you're gonna have to think about this as a event watcher. So it's looking for a specific event, and this is captured by this event all node. And the event type that it's looking for is a mobile app notification action. So if I inject this previous flow, right, we can see that we've got the message has been sent. Now I'm going to pick up my phone. I'm going to show you the message itself. So this is the actual notification. We've got open front door and open garage door. If I click one of them, then this will actually trigger. Now let me tap on open front door. I've currently disconnected it, so it's not actually going to do anything. So tap on it, and now we can see that the message payload, so this message over here, is sort of populating. If you look at the message payload, if you expand the little triangles, you can actually find out the object. So this is sort of the hierarchy. There's our object over here, there's a payload, and then under the payload you have an event type, the event ID, and then the event itself. So when basically it's an object, means it can have multiple things under it, just to give you an idea what it means. And this action is open door, which is sort of what we defined over here. If you remember in the previous tab, if you look at it again, we have open door. So we're expecting this open door, and we're also expecting this open garage door. Those are the two events that we, depending on what gets tapped on the mobile phone itself. At this point, you really need one of these. So you need a switch node. The switch node, you can get it over here. And this is going to actually enable you to do either one or another thing. So it's basically like a path. You're routing the message either one way or another. And the way you route the message is with this over here. This is the message, right? So you can see the message object. The payload is this, right? Payload. The event, so every time there's a dot, we're going down a hierarchy or a tree. So the event is this event over here, and then the last part is action, right? So you can see that then if you pass that property, we'll get open door. So the double equals mean that it's a comparative equal and not an assignment. So we are looking for open door, and that's going to be the branch number 1, and open garage door branch number 2. So this is reflected by these two over there, and you actually can see hover on top of them, and it makes it super clear which one is which. Now at this point, it's really easy. What you do is you create two service call nodes. One is going to be for the opening the front door lock. The other one's going to be to opening the garage door, which you can see over here with the open cover garage door. And you just connect it all up, and this will flow depending on what gets pressed. Now this is a generic thing for all events really. So if you have multiple notification events that you're using, probably really you want to move this to a specific flow over here where you can have them all together. But at the moment, because this is very coupled and tied to this piece of flow and logic, I'm keeping it all together. But just to make you understand, this actually can encapsulate many more messages. Obviously, the event names need to be unique across your whole system. So if you stay for this whole entire video, I'm sure pretty much you've appreciated it. Remember to like the video, because I'll be looking at how many likes this video got to determine if I'm going to make an episode number 2. I hopefully will, and it will come out next week sometime. If it's already out, you'll link it over here, and you're going to access this whole playlist where we're going to be automatically expanding all of the home automation that I've got in my home and putting them into Node Red. This is Joe from Smarter Makers. See you in this video over here. Ciao.